What would you do if someone's snoring kept you up all night? For John Wesley Hardin, the answer was simple. Reach for his gun. This is the shocking true story of the night. One of the Wild West's deadliest gunslingers turned a petty annoyance into a deadly saloon shootout. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the Forgotten History channel for more untold stories from the past.
Put your hands up for stories untold, echoes of glory and hearts so bold. We dig deeper where the truth will glow. Forgotten history, let the rhythm flow.
By the time John Wesley Hardin rode into Abilene, Texas, in the summer of 1871, he was already a wanted man, a fugitive with a price on his head and a reputation that sent shivers through the heart of the Wild West. At just 18 years old, Hardin had gunned down over a dozen men, each kill adding to his growing legend. But how did a teenager become one of the most feared gunslingers of his time? To understand that, we must go back to the beginning. John Wesley Hardin was born in 1853 in Bonham, Texas, just a few years before the Civil War tore the nation apart. Growing up in the chaotic aftermath of the war, Hardin learned early that violence was not just a part of life, it was a way of survival. His father, a Methodist preacher, named him after the founder of the Methodist Church. But young John Wesley seemed destined for a different path. By the age of 15, he claimed his first kill, shooting a former slave named Mage in a dispute that began with a schoolyard fight. Hardin claimed it was self-defense, but the law saw it differently, and he was forced to flee. From that moment, Hardin's life became a whirlwind of gunfights, narrow escapes, and notoriety. He was a natural with a revolver, able to draw and fire with deadly accuracy in the blink of an eye. But it wasn't just his skill with a gun that made him dangerous. It was his temper. Hardin was quick to anger, and even quicker to pull the trigger. By the time he arrived in Abilene, he had already survived multiple attempts on his life and left a trail of bodies in his wake. Yet, despite his violent reputation, Hardin was no mindless killer. He was cunning, calculating, and fiercely protective of his own freedom. In Abilene, he hoped to lay low, but, as we'll soon see, even the smallest provocation could ignite his explosive temper, and when it did, the consequences were deadly. Abilene in 1871 was the beating heart of the Wild West, a bustling cattle town where cowboys, gamblers, and outlaws rubbed shoulders under the glow of saloon lanterns. The streets were alive with the sounds of laughter, piano music, and the occasional gunshot. Saloons lined the dusty thoroughfare, their doors swinging open to reveal smoky interiors filled with men drinking, gambling, and swapping tall tales. But beneath the surface of this lively town lurked danger, for trouble was never far away in Abilene. John Wesley Hardin, now a fugitive with a growing list of enemies, had come to Abilene to lay low. At just 18 years old, he was already a seasoned gunslinger, but even he knew the importance of staying out of sight. On one fateful night, after a long day of avoiding the law and keeping to the shadows, Hardin found himself in one of Abilene's many saloons. Exhausted and irritable, he slumped into a chair, hoping to catch a few hours of rest. But peace was not in the cards for Hardin that night. Across the room, a man was sawing logs, his snoring loud enough to drown out the piano and the chatter of patrons. For most, it might have been a minor annoyance, but for Hardin, it was the final straw. His temper, always simmering just below the surface, began to boil over. What happened next would become one of the most bizarre and deadly moments in Wild West history, a moment that would cement Hardin's reputation as a man who could turn even the smallest irritation into a deadly confrontation. Hardin's patience, already worn thin by exhaustion and irritation, snapped. He stood up from his table, his chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. All eyes turned to him as he strode across the saloon, his revolver already in hand. The snoring man, still oblivious, didn't even have time to react before Hardin was standing over him, his face a mask of fury. Words were exchanged, sharp, heated, and laced with threat. But in the Wild West, words were often the prelude to violence. Within seconds, guns were drawn. Hardin, lightning fast with his revolver, fired first. The crack of the shot echoed through the saloon, and the snoring man slumped to the floor, his chair toppling backward. But the chaos was far from over. Patrons, startled by the sudden gunfire, scrambled for cover. Glasses shattered, tables overturned, and the piano player ducked behind his instrument. Hardin, his temper fully ignited, turned his gun on anyone who dared to challenge him. The saloon became a battlefield, with bullets flying and men shouting. Hardin moved with the precision of a predator, his revolver barking again and again. By the time the smoke cleared, 2 men lay dead, and the once lively saloon was a scene of devastation. Hardin stood amidst the wreckage, his revolver still smoking, his chest heaving with adrenaline. Once again, he had proven why he was one of the most feared men in the West, a man who could turn a petty annoyance into a deadly confrontation in the blink of an eye. The shootout in Abilene became another bloody chapter in the legend of John Wesley Hardin. Though he escaped into the night, his notoriety only grew. News of the Saloon Shootout spread like wildfire, and soon, every lawman in the West had Hardin's name at the top of their most wanted list. For Hardin, life became a relentless game of cat and mouse, a fugitive constantly on the run, always one step ahead of the law. But the story of the snoring man and the deadly confrontation in Abilene would live on, not just as a tale of violence, but as a testament to Hardin's volatile nature. It was a reminder that in the hands of a man like Hardin, even the smallest annoyance could spark a deadly chain reaction. His reputation as one of the most dangerous gunslingers of the Wild West was cemented, not just by his skill with a revolver, but by his unpredictable temper and his willingness to kill at the slightest provocation. As the years passed, Hardin's legend only grew. He became a symbol of the lawlessness and brutality of the Wild West, a man who lived by the gun and, many believed, would one day die by it. But for now, he remained a ghost, slipping through the fingers of those who sought to bring him to justice. John Wesley Hardin's life was a series of violent encounters, each one adding to his bloody legend. But few were as bizarre or as telling as the night a snoring man pushed him over the edge. It's a story that reminds us how, in the Wild West, even the smallest spark could ignite a deadly fire. Hardin's explosive temper and quick trigger finger made him one of the most feared men of his time. But they also sealed his fate as a fugitive, forever on the run. If you enjoyed this story of chaos and consequence, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Forgotten History channel for more untold tales from the past. And let us know in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Hardin's shoes that night? Would you have reached for your gun or found another way to handle the situation? Your thoughts might just spark a fascinating discussion. Until next time, stay curious and remember, history is full of stories waiting to be uncovered.